right, welcome to Look Both Ways with David and Wes, pragmatic conversations about all things transportation. We are back to recording via live stream. Our last episode was pre-recorded, and I put that out 2 weeks ago. I am Wes Marshall, and with me, as always, is
David Zipper. Hello. Good to see you.
All right, good to see you too. It's been a minute, and we got a lot of talk about today, including why Americans know less about road deaths than we think. Before we get to that, I had a question for you, and it's not necessarily even a transportation-related question, but I saw on your newsletter, The Paved with Good Intentions, that you had a couple jobs in bookstores growing up.
Yes, I did, Wes. I'm wondering where you're going with this, but I'm listening. Go ahead.
Was that your first job?
Was that my first job?
Yeah, what was your first? I'm curious what your first job was. Was it?
Yeah, so I have a newsletter that I call Paved with Good Intentions that predates this lovely podcast by a couple years. It's free if you want to sign up. It's on my website.
And it's a great title for anything. I wish we had that for the podcast.
Thank you.
Probably.
I remember I was talking about with somebody when I first created it. I was like, well, it could have either been Road to Hell or Paved with Good Intentions, and I opted for the latter. No, I grew up in the college town of Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And this was the 90s. And Chapel Hill is, it's where the University of North Carolina is. And, for those of you who are familiar with college towns of that era, it may not surprise you when I say that the local economy basically ran on Mexican restaurants, record stores, and bookstores. We had like 8 or 9 of them in this town of like 40,000 people. And, I was a nerdy kid. So, yeah, my first job was, I think I was 16. I was working at the mall back when malls were kind of cool. Remember Mallrats, that movie?
I do.
It's a good movie. And I was working at Walden Books. Remember Walden Books?
I do. They don't exist, do they? They're gone.
No. They were what were they? I think they were owned by Borders, if I remember right. The same company out of Michigan.
Dalton Bookseller, like that was one of
them.
They
were competitors. They were bad. But yeah, no, I have clear memory. This was like, the 90s. I remember Newt Gingrich had a new book out, and I had to put stickers of like 20% off on the book. And I made a point of putting these 20% off stickers, every single one of them on his face, on his face. And I would I had to restock. I would every now and then accidentally leave a sex book in the Bible section just because I was a jerk. I have a bunch of stories along these lines too. But yes, that was one bookstore job.
Keep going with it.
There were so many, but yeah, I did that, and then I had another job simultaneously later at a used bookstore because I always loved books, and so this guy who set up a used bookstore in Chapel Hill hired me as a book buyer, where I would go around to like book sales and thrift shops, and I kind of had a good eye for it. I've always been a little bit of a collector of like ephemera or paper stuff. I'd buy paperbacks or whatever for like 35 cents each. I kind of knew what had value, and I'd give them to him, and he would give me a cut of the proceeds. So those were my 2 high school books. But my 2 high school jobs were both involving books.
Yeah, my high school jobs were not that by any means.
I mean, I'm not surprised. This is why you're in the sports ball, and I'm
my first
doing
job,
what I'm doing.
I was a paper boy. Like that was my first job. I would
that's all American.
Around the
That's
neighborhood
good.
after school and throw like the local paper out. This was like 5 days a week. It was just the Monday through Friday paper. And
so was it the Globe or the Herald?
It was like the Newton Gazette or something.
Oh
like
wow,
that.
Neither of the above. Holy cow!
No,
okay,
because the Globe and the Herald, like those were the 5 a.m. like jobs.
That's really early. Yeah.
Mine was the afternoon one. Like, so after school, I could just bike around my neighborhood. And my best friend had a similar paper out with the same paper, but he was like one neighborhood past me. So he had the biggest hill in town, like where Babe Ruth grew up, Palfrey Hill, and mine was all flat. So he was always mad at me for finishing my paper route like in 20 minutes when his took like 45 for the same amount of money.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That's good. So was that your only high school job, really?
No. After that, I worked in restaurant for a little bit. I was at a place called Belmont Pizza, like an old school Massachusetts pizza sub shop. I made everything but the pizza. So I made fish and chips and like scallops and fried clams, but also all the subs, all the steak tips. That's a Massachusetts thing. Like so, that was a good job for a bit. I worked at a nursing home for a little
Oh,
bit.
wow. You really got around. Okay.
Yeah, and
Look,
after that, I started realizing like I started working at golf courses when I got to like college because I would get free golf for working there for like 2 days a week and stuff like that.
that's very cool. I just did the bookstores,
Just at
but
the
you did
bookstores.
actually. Oh, wait, hold on. I know this is like out of order, whatever. I
Yeah,
did just remember one more story from Walden Books, which can I share it with
yeah,
you
yeah.
because I think
Do
you'll
it.
like it. Because you have to understand, like I'm in Chapel Hill. There are these people working at the bookstore who went to UNC and were extremely smart. UNC is a great school, and they just had no ambition. So they were just, getting barely above minimum wage, get to hang out at a bookstore, and they were, 7 years older than me. And I had a lot of fun learning from them and laughing with them. And I remember one guy in particular had this sardonic wit that I really enjoyed. So do you remember Fabio?
Yeah, the guy with the long hair on the cover of like romance novels.
Yes, he was the
All right.
romance novel cover model. And throughout the 90s, he had long, luxurious hair and like gigantic pecs. Remember this? And he never wore a shirt. Never, never, never.
Where is this going? Like,
Just
I'm
hold on.
curious.
I'm going to go there. So we had these like we, we had these cutouts of various books that we were selling, like cardboard illustrations, and there was one of Fabio because he'd written a book. I'm sure it was ghostwritten, whatever, and it sold like no copies, whatever. We had to get rid of it. So one of my coworkers took the Fabio cardboard cutout, and because it was December, we had all these Christmas lights all over. He put it in the back room where all the employees were. And so for like a month, every time I had to go to the back room and get everything, I was greeted by Fabio with little blinking Christmas lights on his pecs that were basically saying, welcome to the back room of Walden Books. And I swear I thought this was the single funniest thing I had ever seen in my 17 years of life on Earth. I don't know why I feel the urge to share this with you, but I haven't told this story in like 25 years, and you gave me a chance to do so, and I took it, and I'm not going to apologize for it.
I guess if you have a Fabio story in your back pocket, there's never not a good time to tell.
I didn't know that I did. I haven't told this story forever, but anyway, Chapel Hill, great place. Bookstores, love bookstores. That's
The
where I was really going
vibe
with this.
of what you're describing, it sounds like what I would imagine like a record store being like back in the
Totally,
80s,
yeah, yeah,
90s.
yeah.
Like it sounds similar to.
No, Chapel Hill was like a college town that had a great music scene. We're always going to be the next Seattle, and we never were with like the music stuff, like Super Chunk and Squirrel Nut Zippers and Ben Folds Five and all these bands. It was a great place to grow up. I loved it. Just had some really strange, quirky people and things around. That's all.
Were there a lot of bars there too? Because you mentioned like what kind of. I mean, I assume a college town would have that now.
Yeah, I was 17 and
Yeah.
I didn't have a fake ID because I wasn't cool enough. So I mean, the bars were there, and I only
You were
partook of them much later.
you were at that bookstore hanging out.
I was at
Oh,
the bookstore. Exactly. I was at the bookstore.
the other thing I wanted to mention, you probably can't see my shirt, but a fan of ours mailed me. It is fruit.
Whoa.
It says durian at the
Oh,
bottom.
that's so. Wait, why did you get this and not me? I'm the one who is like.
Because I'm the one that didn't know what it was when we had that
Ah,
conversation. So I think they're educating me on a fruit that I should have known prior to us talking about it. And this showed up in the mail when I got back from the vacation last week. I was like, what the heck? And it took me a second to realize what it even was. And it's this fruit. He's wearing sunglasses, like this big durian fruit. So I figured I'd wear it in the
that does
pod.
it say anything, or it's
At the
just.
bottom, it just says durian in big letters. So I can't lift
You
it
know
up that
what's
high.
funny? I
But
could tell it was like a weird shirt with some sort of a logo, and you're wearing like flannel over it. I was like, you kind of look like a '90s alternative rock dad. And
uh,
I mean, I'm just gonna throw it out there.
yeah.
You had your moment. It looks
That's
good.
my
It's a cool
vibe.
shirt. I like it. Well,
Yeah.
this has been we've really gone deep on transportation so far, haven't we? This is good.
My first job was a transport. I was on a bike, biking
You
around,
were on a
throwing
bike.
papers.
Actually, I didn't even. Do you know this, West? And truth be told, then we really probably should move on. But like, I didn't actually know how to ride a bike when I was growing up in Chapel Hill. Did you know that?
I did not know that. When did you
I
learn?
learned how. No, I've actually I've talked about this when I speak in front of biking groups. I learned how to ride a bike in my late 20s when I moved to New York. I think I could barely stay up because I had tried to learn when I was like 6 or 7. I think I hit a kid because I couldn't really control the bike, and I was mortified, and I don't want to do it anymore. And my parents didn't make me, so like I really couldn't ride a bike until I was into my 20s, well into my 20s.
Oh, I was in like a bike gang, we called it. We'd like bike around doing not so it was innocuous stuff, but we called it a bike gang. We'd like hang out on our bikes. I mean, I specifically remember learning how to ride a bike, and for some reason, the bike I had access to did not have a seat. All there was the pole sticking up, and I was going like up and down my street trying to learn how to. I learned how to bike
You
standing
had no
up.
seat.
Right, so I had to stand up as I learned. I couldn't sit, and that was the first bike I, for some reason, was able to learn on. And I have no idea how old I was. I was.
Wow.
Early elementary school, but
you learned a lot before me. No, I mean, I was also my high school. I was like living in the woods. I had no way of getting around without a car. If I wanted to bike, there was nowhere to bike.
Oh no, a bike was our main source of transportation for like a decade there, like until anyone got a driver's license. So,
not for me.
A bike was very important to my childhood.
That is good. I am not proud of this. I think I just missed out, frankly, for a big chunk of my life.
No,
and for the record, for those who don't know, I use a bike to get around on a daily basis in DC now.
It does speak to just where you grew up. Like, I mean,
yeah.
Why would you need to learn how to bike? Because you couldn't bike anywhere. Like, it was just.
Nah, I think it was a little weird I couldn't bike. I mean, I saw some percentage of like 80% of Americans know how to bike. I think it's pretty weird that I was 25 and really couldn't. I'm not proud of that. But
I give you some credit for even at that point going to learn how to do it. Like that must have been a little bit hard to be like, hey, here I am, an adult male, and I'm.
Yeah, I was peer pressured by a good friend of mine, a journalist actually, Lydia DePillis, who was like, "It's ridiculous, you don't know how to bike," and forced me to get on Capital Bike Share, and I did. And first few times,
so you learned on the Capital Bike Share?
I did. They're like, why? They're indestructible. It was great.
Yeah. All right. Oh, Lydia, thank you for making David do that.
Lydia, I've told her she changed my life, and then she like rolls her eyes at me. She's a friend of mine who's a journalist in New York.
And now you're biking around Italy, getting cappuccinos and all sorts of stuff.
I mean, if I can, I will. Sure.
All right. Let's move on. So now it's time for.
I think that was the longest intro we've ever had. I'm sorry for those who tapped out like 10 minutes ago. Go ahead.
It was good stuff, though. I enjoyed our conversation. And it's been a while since we talked, so I feel like we had to catch up a little bit.
I missed
All right, so now it's time for Word on the Street, where we discuss some transportation issue that's in the news. This week, we'll be discussing whether a town has the right to limit who can use this road. So this one caught my attention because it's happening near me, right near Denver. It's a town called Beaumar. It's a small town, I think just southwest of Denver. And they have just approved a plan to put gates on some of its public roads to cut down on people driving through their town.
How affluent is this town? I'm curious.
It's a small town with like 700 people. And I looked this up today. Their median price of a home is around $2 million.
That's what I guessed. Keep going. Okay.
They were listed. The reason why I looked this up, the article I happened to see that had nothing to do with this story, but it was looking at where the most expensive starter homes were in Colorado, in this town. Their starter home, I think it's like the 20 percentile of a housing cost. It was like $1.3 or $4 million.
Oh, okay. It's a bargain. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can understand it maybe from their perspective. Their residents are frustrated. Like nobody wants speeding, cut through traffic on their local streets. But this also raises some bigger questions. Like these roads are public roads. Can a town really turn themselves into what feels like a gated community? And if one town can do that, like what stops the next town from doing the same thing?
Well,
and so on and so
didn't
forth.
I see just to get I obviously don't know this town, but
yeah.
in the little bit I read, I thought, didn't I see like a neighboring town threatening to like basically box this town in if they did it so
Well,
they
it'd have to
couldn't
take
travel
more than
through?
one town. I mean, I've been kind of joking that's what's going to happen. Like Denver would have to be one of these towns, but if all the surrounding towns did that, you could, in theory, cordon them off, right? Because the way the gate's going to work is they're going to have little RFID things on either their car or something where the gate will open for them. So if you're a resident of this town, the gate will open for you, and then you
Yeah.
can drive on through, right? If not, you're sort of locked out. I would assume that's just for cars. Like as a pedestrian or bicyclist, I would think you could still just waltz
Yeah.
in, but it is still, it's they're saying it's about safety, but is it about exclusion? I don't know. There's a lot of things we could hit on here, but it's an interesting thing they're trying to do.
And well, let me ask this.
Okay.
How were those roads built? Which
Well, they're
what revenue sources
so
went into
these
building those
weren't
roads?
state roads. So like one of the roads they're putting the gate on is Sheridan Boulevard, and in other parts of in like Denver, that is a CDOT
Hmm.
roadway. But I believe in Beaumar, it is a local public road. So these are roads funded by, I guess, the town of Beaumar at some point in their history with taxpayer money.
So there was no state or county or federal dollars that went into constructing or maintaining those roads. That's hard
I
for me
mean,
to believe.
it would be hard to kind of nail that down, but you would assume they're probably getting some money from other entities that go towards their
Yeah.
roadways. Like, so for them to be solely like with property tax revenue, I doubt that's the case, or sales tax. I mean, it'd
Yeah.
likely be money coming from elsewhere. I mean, and that's the case with. I mean, we talked about transportation finance on this before, but the gas tax by no means comes close to paying for all our transportation. Like that money is coming from somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think at the most basic level, there is an obvious issue if some of the people whose taxpayer dollars went toward constructing or maintaining those roads are then excluded from actually using those roads. That just seems like inherently unfair. And I would have to imagine that these are not I mean, frankly, if these were all privately funded roads, whatever, like, and that happens with some frequency in this country, right? That you see a gated community
Yeah.
or like a literal gate, like that's what a driveway with a gate is. That's not a public road, that driveway. That's just somebody who's maintaining and building that driveway themselves. And they want to control who has access to it and whatever, that's fine. But that's a private roadway. What you're describing here is different because it's a public roadway that I have to imagine drew from taxpayer dollars other than the people who live in this town. The other issue, well, the other thing to point out is that this is not a specific issue. Is this the first time you'd heard about something like this happening in Beaumar?
No, I don't remember offhand what it is, but I do remember hearing this happen in another town. I can't remember
Yeah,
where,
I can.
but at least
Yeah.
in that town, I know they only did it during like the peak hours. Like it was only, 4 to 7 p.m. or something like that, or like
Well,
8 a.m. to 10 a.m. or whatever.
Well,
it
and this
was.
is where like it's so easy to basically like, there's a bunch of rich people that don't want any of the riffraff coming onto their roads, and screw them like that. And I think there's some validity in that kind of dismissal. Frankly, like that you should be pretty critical of and skeptical of a move like this. But I'll say a couple things. First of all, it's not just this town. Like the example that came to my mind when you first mentioned this to me was actually out in California, in LA, Sherman Oaks, a very affluent suburb. Basically, like there's a whole kerfluffle, a bunch of stories about this like 8 years ago when Sherman Oaks was demanding that Waze, the wayfinding app, stop rerouting people onto local streets to avoid really bad
I remember
congestion.
that.
Yeah, and Sherman Oaks again, very affluent suburb. What somebody told me, and I can't verify this, but what someone told me who has knowledge of LA transportation said that actually like Waze quietly agreed that they would, or Google quietly agreed they would stop doing it, just as like a favor, which is so there. But I'm of two minds here. Like on one side, this is a public roadway. How dare anybody say certain people can or can't use it? On the other hand, when this sort of stuff happens, and frankly, with Google Maps and with Waze and these other apps, like this happens constantly. You basically have traffic that is being rerouted from arterials or from highways onto local streets that were never designed to handle that level of traffic. And I can understand how people who live there are like, well, what the hell is going on here? I moved here because I want to be on a local street. And now basically I've got regular cars going through constantly. I don't feel comfortable having my kids outside the way that I expected to. That to me is a legitimate concern to a degree. And I'm curious what you think.
No, it is. And the Waze example, like you can understand, like as a private company, they could point people wherever they want to. Like it's not, it's not
well
like
with public roads. They're not going to point you onto a private road. But
right.
Keep going. Yeah.
But they like for them to say, hey, we're gonna not, if somebody from Sherman Oaks came to them and gave them a ton of money and said, hey, let's make sure people aren't cutting through my street, Google could say, sure, we can do that. Or they could do it for free. It's up to them. But with this, like you said, we have public roads. We have a community basically saying, like, we're not going to be part of the regional transportation system anymore. And we're not going to allow other people to cut through our town. Like, they are turning it into a gated community, which is different than Google just pointing people in a different direction.
I don't know. It seems like in both situations, you've got a community that's saying, we do not want our roadways to be part of the public road network. We want to control who has access to them.
Right. And in the California example, people could still drive through there, but it just will be a private company telling them that they should have gone a different direction.
Yeah, well, no, yeah. I mean, of course, Waze is now going to be rerouting people onto other streets to get around the traffic in LA. So maybe those and this is where you end up in problems, right? Because now maybe that marginal driver who was rerouted from the highway that's at back-to-back traffic into a Sherman Oaks roadway, now they'll be rerouted to another town that's less affluent, maybe has more minority residents. And those residents don't particularly want to have more through traffic either, but they don't have the political power of an affluent place like Sherman Oaks to basically get Google to stop.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
I'm not saying it's right. What I'm saying is like it's not illegal. Like Google can do whatever they want on that front, right? Like in this case, like if if some random town just says like no one can drive through unless you are a property owner here, I don't know. That seems like it could border on illegal. Like, is it in this case? They're, say Sherman Oaks just put up gates everywhere and said no one can drive through, and took Google out of the equation. Like that's a very different thing than what Google deciding, hey, let's reroute people so we don't annoy a certain group of people that we happen to like.
It's different, but I think it's different only in extent, not in quality. And both, to me, what's the principle or the guiding force is similar, which is trying to keep out those people. It's never about residents who are speeding or residents who are, like clogging up the roads, or it's always those outsiders.
So that's the thing that I'm guessing Sherman Oaks and probably Beaumar will both find, is that they're still going to have cars speeding on these streets even after they close them off to the so-called outsiders. Like it's them that is part of the problem.
No, and that to me is actually one of the more interesting sort of psychological elements of local streets in this way. It goes back to, I wrote a story a year ago about speed humps that we talked about, I believe, on a previous episode. And one of the things that sort of came out when I was talking with city DOT folks all the time is that, residents love asking for speed humps out on their streets. But when they ask them why, it's often to slow down those bastards who come in from outside and speed on my streets. It's never local residents in their minds. It's always somebody from outside. And honestly, if those speed humps end up deterring those people from driving on those streets and instead going elsewhere, all the better. Is what
so would you suggest that as a better solution for a place like Beaumar is to put in a bunch of traffic calming to make it, super annoying to cut through there? Or
possibly. I don't really know what the problem. It's unclear to me what exactly the problem is. The problem could simply be racism in some of these places where we don't like people who look different from us or have different kinds of cars from us being on our streets. That's the problem. It's unclear what exactly is driving these sorts of quote unquote
Well, I
concerns.
think there's a difference between what the stated problem is and what the real problem is. I think the
Yeah.
stated problem they're
Yeah.
saying is safety, right? They're
Yeah, sure. They
saying
can
that
say what they will, but
these people are flying through our neighborhood and we want to make sure that doesn't happen, so we're going to limit it to just our residents.
mhm.
The real problem could be everything you just listed.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is why I think it's a slippery slope. It's a dangerous direction to go
Ooh,
down.
it's slippery slope.
I know I know that's an overused term, but it is like I think that I think that the solution here that I would be open to would be a systematic one where there's some kind of regulation or universal agreement by Google, Waze, Apple Maps to not redirect traffic onto from highways onto local streets, even if time could be saved that way. If you do that everywhere in the state of California or everywhere across the whole country, then I say, great, that actually makes some sense because the fact of the matter is these streets were not designed to handle the levels of traffic that they might have to with these wayfinding apps. But I really don't like basically leaving it up to local communities to either press the wayfinding apps for it or just put up walls because what's going to be happening is you've got the richer, whiter places that are going to be able to do it and other places can't. And that's just inherently wrong. It's obviously wrong.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the bigger problem I have with it is if you, like what you were suggesting, if you blow this out bigger, like if everybody did this, if towns all over the place are putting up gates so only their residents can come in, like what would our world look like? It wouldn't function.
Well, that's true too. Yeah. Well, that's why like putting up I guess you're focused on the gates. I'm really thinking about just like limiting street access period, which to me is the more sort of like salient issue, I guess. Like, of course, you can't have multiple communities just basically walling off their streets. Very quickly, the entire roadway network breaks down. I think that's kind of obvious, isn't it? Like, this is just not a scalable solution.
Right. And that's my problem. But like we can't, because like we talked about at the very beginning of this, what if all the towns around them decided to
Yeah.
do the same thing to them? Like they'd be stuck in their little community and not able to leave.
Yeah. No, I mean, I suspect one way or the other, this town is going to have to back down. But I think, but
It's already been approved. It sounds like they're,
it's been approved. Well, we'll see how that
yeah.
plays out. I'm curious how that plays out. But I think, if you take at face value that they're saying it really is safety, let's say that it is safety. It's cars that are flying through because they're 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 they're, uh, maybe they're coming from a nearby highway. There's research that shows that cars often maintain speed on even
Yeah.
local roads after they exit highways. Right? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that actually maybe if this is a wayfinding issue, I think there could be a systemic solution there. If
Right. I
it's
mean,
like
I would suggest there's a design solution to this. Like,
yeah. I think
right.
there could be, but maybe the issue isn't wayfinding. Maybe it's the fact that the streets in this town are really flat and open, and so you've got some teenagers that like to race. I don't know. In that case, then the speed humps could work, but that's also a design solution, right? That feels like these are the right ways of thinking about it, not just like throw up gates, keep all the bastards out. I don't see that
Right.
being a winning option.
It feels like they're jumping to like the end all
Yeah.
solution. Like we can't possibly solve it with anything else, so let's just do this. And it feels like they could solve it with a lot of other things before you get to this point. And this point, my problem with it is that it's not scalable. It's not sustainable. Like we could not possibly do this everywhere.
Yeah.
Like even if
Obviously.
there's like not even say there's just like a half dozen towns near where you live where you just can't drive through. It'd be like what your mapping would lead you to all the places to it would create other problems. Like there's downstream effects that. Like, yes, you make these people's lives a little bit better. And I really don't know if there are real safety problems there or if it's just perceived safety. Like, there's a difference there.
No, I mean, at the risk of getting away from the topic of transportation, like, it's, I think, part and parcel of kind of a societal challenge that we have right now where, like, increasingly feels like our reflexive response to a problem in a community is to say, okay, well, how do we just sort of, handle it ourselves and keep everybody else out rather than look for an answer that could work for everybody writ large. The sort of, it feels like it's almost like institutional selfishness what this town is doing. And I think it's unfortunate that that's the immediate direction they went in, given that we've already thrown out a few design-based solutions that could address their issue in a way that doesn't like sort of limit the mobility of everybody else.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I agree. All right, I think now is probably time to go to the next topic, roundabout. Before I
Yeah.
do that, I will say Gary in our chat says, for what it's worth, he was the last person in his neighborhood to learn how to ride a bike.
Good, Gary. There you go, Gary. You and I
He
are
he
simpatico. I thank you. Thank you for that.
he was 7 at the time when he
Oh,
learned.
well, never mind, Gary. Go to hell. Sorry.
Everybody else learned when they were 5 in his neighborhood. So
No, this is what I'm saying. I know I'm the weird one. I'm not really proud of this, but I made up for it. I own like 5 bikes now, and I bike everywhere.
all right, good.
Well, I'm defensive in case you can't tell. Should we do roundabout?
Yeah, so I think you're going to go first here, right?
Yeah, and in a way, we're sort of sticking with this issue of of public versus private roadways. Although I don't think you and I thought it up that way. We want to talk about crash data and what we know and don't know in the U.S. because there's a lot of blind spots, and I think we're actually missing a lot of deaths that occur on our roadways. So I think both you and I, Wes, have topics to sort of share about this. I'll go first, I suppose, because I have a story coming out. I think it's going to be out by the time this episode airs as a podcast, so you can find it on Bloomberg or on my social media feeds and what have you. But really the hook for the story is a really sad crash that occurred or death that occurred a few weeks ago in Rhode Island, where Gordon Wood, who is a really renowned historian from Brown University, like a famous one. He wrote a bunch of won the Pulitzer for a book about the Revolutionary War. He was name checked by Matt Damon's character in that famous scene from Good Will Hunting, like, "Do you have apples?" Like when Matt Damon goes on that rant
How
about
them
like
apples. It's not
how,
do you like oh
do
yeah.
you,
Well, he's like, do you like? Yeah, okay, I see where you're going. Yeah, I know.
we can both be right in that way, Wes.
Yes, when he goes through like, oh, your first year is like you're probably spouting this, and then next year you're gonna read that, and you're gonna. So he's the one that's
he destroys the snooty grad student at the bar,
ponytailed guy. Yeah,
defending his friend. I just rewatched that scene. It's really a good scene.
But
anyway, so yeah, Mr. Wood is name checked there. And but Gordon Wood was, and this is not funny at all. It was a few weeks ago. He was walking across a supermarket parking lot in Rhode Island, and a vehicle driver struck and killed him. And that's tragic in all kinds of ways. Obviously, I think I would say a roadway death. I think most people intuitively would say so. But what's peculiar but true is that it's not a roadway death according to the federal government, and it's not going to be captured in the annual tallies of road deaths in the U.S. because parking lots, as well as driveways, are private property most of the time in the United States. And because it's private property, that the crashes that occur there, and it's pedestrians and cyclists who are most vulnerable, as is often the case, don't get tallied. They don't get added to the annual roadway deaths. And we don't actually even really know how many people are killed in these sorts of incidents. And it's different risks. Like, obviously, Professor Wood was struck and killed while walking in a parking lot, which can certainly happen. In driveways, there's a real risk of front over and back over deaths with kids. There's a nonprofit that is called Kids in Car Safety that documented 10 children who were killed in an 18-day period between May and June this year in front over and back over deaths in driveways, which is just not just driveways, it's just front over, back over deaths. Excuse me. I assume the majority were in driveways, but it's horrible. And I have a story coming out about this, basically saying that it is, in my view, kind of unconscionable that NHTSA does not consider these deaths to be considered roadway deaths. They call them non-traffic fatalities. Because we don't actually know what's going on with them, we don't know the trend lines, and if we're not measuring it, we can't really fix it. And there's reasons to expect that the numbers are rising. When I talked to a few experts for the story, because pedestrians and cyclists have been dying in increasing numbers elsewhere, it would make sense that they are here too, with the real risk factors seeming to be car bloat, the ongoing expansion of vehicle size, which puts everybody at risk with bigger blind zones and greater mass, and also driver distraction from smartphones and from infotainment systems. So I have more things I could say about this, but I'll pause here because obviously, Wes, your career is spent in a large ways looking at roadway crash data. And I'm curious if you have points of view on this particular element, which is really looking, I guess, at sort of like the private parking related crash deaths that don't get captured in our data.
This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I mean, this is, I have a whole section of my book on sort of the problems with our crash data, and the private property piece of it is bigger than we think. So, it's not just parking lots and driveways, but it would be gated communities too. Like those,
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
would be considered private, and those would not get into our normal crash databases. And like NHTSA does have the non-traffic surveillance system that tries to account for these, but they don't ever get into my normal crash database. And
and they're also importantly, those deaths are not included in the annual tallies.
No, they're
right?
not. So the last time they put out data, we talked about this, you and I, before, but it was back in 2021, and at that time, I think it was close to 4,000 deaths in that 1 year.
I think it could have, but a lot of those were like people in cars that may have gotten submerged, or it's so confusing figuring out what the hell happened.
So it's not just the crashes on private roads, driveways, parking lots, gated communities, but it's also like kids in hot cars. It's carbon monoxide poisoning. I think they even list vehicles that are falling on people like as a cause of death in this. So it's all the things that don't get captured that are sort of vehicle related. And, for years, I think the number used to be around 2,500, but the last number I saw was closer to 4,000. So
yeah, but we don't know how. But it's a lot less than that. I think that are pedestrians and cyclists.
And
on these private roads, like maybe 500 or 600 is what I saw.
Like they're pulling that data from all over the place, so it's a national estimate. It's not really something that's ever used as a local safety tool. Like people that do road safety research, or if you work for a municipality that's trying to, come up with where your crash hotspots are, these don't show up. So if there's one driveway that happens to be killing a lot of people, you would not find it through our normal protocols.
No, and that's right. And just doing simple back of the envelope calculations, which is what I was trying to do when I wrote this Bloomberg story, you end up realizing that there's easily plausible that pedestrian deaths in the U.S. are over 10% higher than we think if you're taking into account front over, rollover deaths, parking lot deaths of this kind. Like that's a huge difference. And I frankly think it just doesn't make sense that we put this, in my view, sort of artificial wall between a road death that occurs on a street versus one that occurs in a parking lot, because the risk factors are in many ways similar. I think that, if a loved one died in a parking lot versus on a street, we would be just as horrified and think about it somewhat similarly. So the sort of it's like an artificial chasm in data collection that seems to have a lot of downstream effects that are bad for how we think about roadway safety and respond to it in this country.
Oh, for sure. And it is a big hole in our knowledge of road safety. And it further would lead to differences in how we might respond to it. Like we're not looking at safety in parking lots in the way we probably should, because we don't really realize we have a problem there.
Yeah. Like I don't even have you seen papers looking at what a safer parking lot design for pedestrians would look like? I've never seen that.
Yes, I have.
You have?
I'm I used to do a lot of site engineering work, and obviously safety is my thing. I mean, but like the way we, put in those like walkways between, like there are things you can do, and a lot of communities require trees, not even for safety in parking lots, but it is sort of something that can help. There are things you can do better, and I think the better parking lot designers do somewhat better at that. But even where we place the parking lot, my kids always get annoyed with me when I park, like when we go to, sometimes like a big box type store. I park in kind of a weird place off to the side sometimes. And the reason I do that is because we don't have to cross the driveway that kind of cuts right in front of the store, because that's like people are flying right in front of Home Depot and places like that. So I park on the side and like, why are you parking over here? Like everyone's parking over there. I was like, well, this way we don't have to cross anything. We just kind of walk around the building and get into it. But most places aren't designed that way. Like we design them in a way where we're leading to unnecessary conflicts and it could be done better because I don't think that the kind of stuff I mentioned I saw, I don't think it's something that is that ubiquitous. I don't think many people see or pay attention to that kind of stuff when it comes to parking lot design.
Yeah, and I think the design factor makes a lot of sense. I also think that this is an area where carb load really matters. There have been a whole series of local TV stations in DC and Indiana that did these series where they literally just put a woman in an SUV and just line up children sitting in front of the car. And the woman sitting in front is just shocked. She literally cannot see any of the children. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The ninth one, they can start to see someone maybe because of the blind zones here. There's we're recording this just like a day after the New York Times had a big front page story investigation into carb load and how dangerous it is for pedestrians with some good illustrations. I actually didn't think the content was groundbreaking, but the illustrations were very good. And, the fact is carb load is, I think, particularly likely to cause injuries and deaths in these sorts of parking situations where you have people walking every which way. Yeah. But it also creates other kinds of issues too. Like, did you see, this is like amusing, but not really. Like, of course, it was in Florida a few months ago. There was some woman in a lifted truck in a parking lot, and she's driving along, comes across a Lamborghini with somebody in it. They're on the street. They're on the parking lot, whatever it's called, like an aisle, whatever. The woman drives on top of the Lamborghini, doesn't even notice, and only gets out of her lifted truck because she's like, why am I no longer able to move forward as the Lamborghini is completely totaled? The guy was fine.
I shouldn't laugh at that, but it's like she's driving the Gravedigger, like a big monster truck.
The whole thing is absurd. We put a story in the show notes, but like carb load is really bad in these sorts of situations, and we just don't know how bad because we don't have the freaking data. I find it very frustrating.
Like this, speaks to the driveway deaths, and it's horrible when you see those stories of like a father or mother that backs over their kid and kills them.
Oh, it's horrific. Right? Yeah.
But I live in a neighborhood where we're alley loaded, so we don't have driveways. So when I was looking for houses in Denver, like at the time, my oldest was about to turn 5, and she was starting to bike. Like that was very important to me in my decision making because I wanted her to be able to bike around the block. And now, when she did that, when she was a kid, there was 2 alleys instead of 50 driveways, and that is a big safety thing that I know of, but would never get into our safety. If any kid is hit on any of those driveways as they bike around the block, that wouldn't end up in my safety data. So we don't even realize we have a problem. So even trying to put numbers to how important like alleys would be versus driveways, it's hard to do that kind of research because that data doesn't exist like it should. So like I know as someone that designs stuff that this is important, but I don't think people realize how important it is.
Well, I think we're on the same page with this one. This is sort of my pet peeve with inadequate crash data, but I think you have one as well, right? I should turn it over to you.
I have a lot of them, but
well, start with one for the purpose of this podcast.
I hear this all the time from people that are into safety. Like they all want a more data-driven approach to safety, and I certainly do too. And I even throw out this line in my book. So Mayor Bloomberg, back when he was mayor of New York, like he used to say, "In God we trust, everyone else bring data."
That's my boss. I used to work for him, right?
Yeah.
Did you know that? Yeah.
Yeah, you've mentioned it on the pod before. Did he say that to you? Did you ever hear him say that?
No, he didn't. But we always quoted it to each other because we thought it was a great line. It is a great line.
And it's not even originated with him. Like when I was researching my book, I did find it. Like, I think it was at NASA on the wall in Houston. Back with the Apollo, and like there's an incident. I found it, I think, in a book in the 80s too. So it, like Mayor Bloomberg did use it, but it doesn't originate. I don't know. Big picture, like I think, like that's the right instinct. Like, but it immediately raises some questions, like what data are we actually bringing to the table when it comes to safety? So most of the time, like the data means police collected crash data. And this data is useful, but we've already talked about some of the holes in it. The fact that it does not include crashes that happen on private property, but even on public roads, like the data is often like filtered in some strange ways. So, for example, in a lot of cities, the police only make a report if there is an actual injury or death, or that you have to have a certain amount of property damage in terms of value. So, like a lot of cities, it might be $1,000. So if you total a cheap car, that might not get into the crash data unless someone gets hurt. But if like two Teslas bump each other, that can get into our crash data because their property damage exceeds like $1,000. There's also problems with bias about underreporting for bikes, for pedestrians, for the way that the police even try to tell us what happened in those crashes. I sometimes say like a dead pedestrian cannot tell their side of the story. So the survivorship bias, the people that are there to say what happened. Oh, this pedestrian jumped out and came out of nowhere. Like, well, that pedestrian is dead now, and they can't really tell their side of the story. And even in terms of things like severity, like Nick Farinchek, my former PhD student, he's a great professor at University of New Mexico. He has a paper where he compared the severity of injuries in the police reported to what the hospital said about the same crashes. And they were not even close. Like the police would essentially report anything with a lot of blood as a severe injury. And the hospitals, they could patch somebody up and put on a cast or something and the person was okay. And a lot of the stuff that the police didn't see, like concussions or internal bleeding, the police would say it was no injury whatsoever, but the hospital would find out there was a big injury. So, like, there's a lot of problems with our police reported crash data. So when you hear people say, let's just follow the data, I don't know, how do you respond to that? Like, knowing how limited the data can be?
Well, I mean, it's all we have right now. I mean, it's very obvious that there's much better ways of doing this. When I was in Scandinavia a couple of years ago, I learned about how in Finland, I believe it was, they handle a fatal crash, which they don't have many of. They have a few dozen per year. Do you know about this? They have like a cross-skilled team that does an investigation into every death and maybe even every serious injury that includes people who come from public health, who are from the policing, who are with roadway design, and they basically issue a report saying, here's what happened and what could have potentially prevented it. And I think when you have that, it's that sort of multifaceted post hoc assessment, you have a much, much, much clearer perspective of what really took place. And in this country, we've never really done that at all. And that's something that Jennifer Hamady, the head of the National Transportation Safety Board, has criticized. It's something that I actually got really intrigued by a few years ago. I wrote a story when Indianapolis announced they were creating a investigatory body for the city to look into fatal crashes, which was meant to draw from, again, road design as well as the police and some other areas. I think it was frankly overblown. I don't think it was less than meets the eye, unfortunately. But to me, that's the way of actually addressing this is you invest the resources and the time to have a much clearer picture of what really happened in an incident like this.
Yeah, no, I have heard of the Finland team that does it. And I also mentioned in my book that New York has I believe it's called SAFE, the Severe Accident Forensic Evaluation Team. They started it back in like the late 80s, and they would go out and evaluate fatal crashes in the same way. And one of the only other cities I know in the U.S. that does that is Denver. Like Denver has the Vision Zero Rapid Response Team. When a fatal crash happens, they probably not to the extent that Finland does, but they send out a team of people to really look at what we could have done better. And most cities are hesitant to do that because they feel like if you change anything, you're sort of admitting that there was something wrong in the first place, and they feel like it's a liability issue. Yeah,
no, that makes sense. And it also doesn't really address some of what you were talking about a few moments ago. Like, what if somebody, for example, is in a crash, they go to the hospital a week later because it was internal injuries, and they end up dying a month after that. It may not even be listed as a fatal crash. Doesn't trigger any of this stuff.
No, right? It wouldn't, because our FARS database is a 30-day. So if you die within 30 days, it counts as a crash death. If you are in a coma for a month and a half and then die, it does not count as a crash. Like, you just be would listed as a severe
Yeah.
injury, assuming the police officer even knew that you ended up in a coma.
Yeah, I mean, these are so there's two different issues here. One, I would say, is we don't actually capture all of the crash. There's several issues. I'm not sure it's just two.
Yeah.
We don't actually capture all of the crash deaths that really do occur, like
Yeah.
the ones I was talking before about parking lots or whatever. And you're mentioning some about someone who dies more than 30 days after the incident. Then for the crashes that are captured, we are not actually getting an accurate assessment of what really took place because the police are wrong, or there are different standards from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Lots of things
Or even
can
from
go
officer
wrong.
to officer, like they is very few standards as to how they collect the data, and like even the reports they use are not really set up to collect information on a bike or ped crash. At the same
Right.
time, there's a lot of our population that would be hesitant to call the police about anything unless they really have to. So a lot of times the police are never called about crashes where there are injuries, so it never even gets to them to get. I mean, for good reason too. Like
Yeah.
having to deal with a police officer when you don't have to. Like, I get it,
Yeah.
but it
No.
also creates a hole in our data, just like all these things. And
Yeah. No, that's right. And I think that's right. But I think there's also there's a data collection element that needs to get fixed. But there's also, I think, a resource element where if we just spent more money investigating more crashes with a multifaceted team or a multi-skilled team, whatever the right word would be,
yeah,
I think we would understand a lot more about what really led to the incident and how to address it. And that's frankly just a matter of making it a priority. Some places have done it, like Finland, and we just have not.
yeah. I mean, but even. I mean, I love what the Vision Zero rapid response team is doing in Denver, but at the same time, they start with the police crash report. Like,
Well,
that's like they take
yeah.
they read what the police officer said and they go out there and they just kind of look at the intersection. And you're not even getting close to what I would consider the full picture of
No, no,
maybe
no.
what
Well,
happened,
but I mean,
right?
that's a piece of it. The police
It's a
report is a
piece of
piece of
it.
it, but
Yeah.
it's the police make all. But also, what drives me crazy is the police always when this gets into the media stories, I roll my eyes like the driver stayed at the scene. I'm like, well, if the driver left, it's a crime. They don't
Yeah.
get a
A pat on the
cookie
back.
because
Yeah.
they stayed at the scene after striking a pedestrian. Why is this in the story? And it's there because the police have to note it for their own records. It has nothing
and
to
that-
do, in my
it
view,
speaks to
on a media
why
account.
and why are the police even doing this in the first place? I mean, from my perspective, they're doing it to help out the insurance companies. Like, yes,
Yeah.
maybe they can throw some citations to people that were speeding or drunk or what have you, but for the most part, they're trying to help the insurance companies figure out who needs to pay. Like, who's the
No.
fault? Who needs to pay? Like, they're not doing it to help me as a safety researcher come up with better solutions.
No, they're not. This gets to this actually, when you take a big step back, you end up in sort of like some philosophy of transportation and philosophy of police enforcement questions here, because you start asking, like, why are the police involved in traffic
Yeah.
enforcement? It's one thing if for a murder or a rape or what have you, like, of course, those are crimes that must be addressed, but traffic enforcement is different. Those are crashes where it's not obviously, a crime being committed. And if you go back 100 years in time, I don't know, I'm trying to remember where I read this. Maybe it was Peter Norton, but it might not have been. I can't remember. But there was a sort of like intellectual leader of the police in the 20s in Berkeley, California. Do you know? I forget his name. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I remember this story. It might have been Peter's book.
I can't remember where I read about him, but I've seen his name come up a few times. It's annoying that it slipped my mind. But he was a very thoughtful spokesperson of police work in the early 20th century. And he was adamant that the police should not be doing traffic control. It is not what the police should be doing, he said, because we don't have the manpower, he said, but also undermines the relationship that the police need to maintain with the public. We need to maintain a relationship of trust and support. And if we are seen as enforcing traffic rules on everyone, we're going to end up inevitably having moments of tension. You know what? This was in Sarah Seo's book. That's where it was. Sarah Seo's book, Policing the Open Road. And the guy was dead on, because you think now about the racial element with people being pulled over, and you think about how many pissed people get at the cops when they get a ticket. I think that man was prescient. I'm sorry, I can't
Yeah.
remember his name. I want to credit him.
I think this also speaks. I mean, one of the big themes of my book is like the way the traffic engineers just believe that we built a safe system, and if everyone just followed the rules of the road, you'd be safe too. So the thinking is that if a crash happened, somebody must have not been following the rules of the road. Therefore, we need to send the police out to figure that out. Like that is kind of the big picture mindset is like, of course the police have to come. Somebody did something illegal, caused this crash. Let's do something about it.
Yep. Sorry, I have to get this in there. August Vollmer, that's his name.
There you go.
I've never done this before on a podcast, but it was driving me so crazy. I just Googled it.
We'll put it in the show
August,
notes.
Vollmer. And for those who are curious about that particular issue, I'm pretty confident that Sarah Seo, who's a brilliant academic, a legal academic, wrote about him in Policing the Open Road. I'm like 90% sure.
All right, so I think your solution sounds like more funding. I mean, but who are we giving that funding to? Is it to the police? Is it to that multi-team?
No, we need a new apparatus. I mean, there was a few years ago, there was an effort, which I think kind of petered out in New York City, to have a traffic investigatory body that would be multidisciplinary that NYC DOT would lead. And I was really excited about that because explicitly the goal was to take that responsibility away from the police. And, it sounds like maybe that's to an extent what the team in Denver is trying to do. I think that makes a lot of sense. But the fact of the matter is everybody's overstretched and you do need resources to really do
the
this.
Denver team's not trying to do that. Like they're trying to just come back in and see if there's anything we can do with design or signage or something to help out in that. Like
That's
they're
not as
basically
dynamic.
saying like maybe there's something wrong with this intersection or street. Like there's something we can do quickly and not have to wait for like multiple fatalities for a warrant to be issued.
Yeah, no, I do think this is a money and resources issue. This is the kind of thing where, God, what is it? Pete Buttigieg said a few months ago that his big regret from being USDOT secretary was not supporting autonomous vehicles enough, which made me kind of want to throw up. And I was like, how about like not doing anything specifically to address the like roadway safety stuff that you talked about all the time? I mean, it's like, I'm exaggerating. He did get some money out with Safe Streets for All and everything, but he did nothing about car bloat. He could have put out some money through an interesting competitive grant to enable communities to trial the multidisciplinary sort of team along these lines. That would have been wonderful, but it didn't happen. To me, I look at, I don't know, I found his post-mortem to be off base, shall we say.
I know we don't really have guests on our podcast, but he might be one that we were talking to.
He's a brilliant guy. I have a lot of respect for him in many ways, but I look back at his time at USDOT, particularly through a safety lens, and I'm just like, I don't really know what you accomplished. Bluntly, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the problem is like the people that are put in those positions, like they're not there because transportation is their like love. Like they're there for political purposes and they have bigger ambitions.
Buttigieg cared. No, Buttigieg was actually he really did care about transportation.
Than most, but his goal is probably to be president someday. It wasn't to be the best Secretary of Transportation in the history of Secretary of Transportations.
I interviewed him once in Slate. I remember I asked him, this was, I don't know, like 2022. And I asked him, you talk about, you referenced how in your safety report, Secretary, that research shows that heavier cars can inflict more damage and are more dangerous in a crash with the pedestrian. Does that mean then that there should be a consideration of measures to reduce the size of American cars? Just that politely and open-ended. And he changed the topic as quickly as he possibly could. He got the hell out of there.
As a good politician does. He doesn't even try to answer the question poorly. He just deflects.
Nope, he got out of there. Yeah. And his press person told me afterwards that he'd probably never been asked that before. I think now it's a different situation, but this was early days in car bloat discourse. I think, I don't know, should we have a drink, dude?
Yeah, it's about that time. I mean, I do know for a fact he got a copy of my book. I don't know if he read it or not, but I signed one for him, and it was given to him. So
I mean, the guy speaks Norwegian, supposedly. You'd hope he follows Norway's excellent road safety practices.
By the way, Volvo does have a team that does the same thing in Sweden. Like when there is a
It
fatal
does.
crash involving a Volvo, like they go out and do
Hmm.
a deep dive into what happened. So,
That's true. I am familiar with that.
all right. So,
All
what are you
right.
drinking today?
Well, I've gotten some flack on this podcast from you and from some of our esteemed
Don't blame me.
audience for
Don't blame me for
drinking
this.
Eastern European petrol oil or whatever the hell that person wrote in saying. So I was in Italy recently and I got a different type of weird liqueur. This is what's called Cardus. You ever heard of this, dude?
I don't
It's
know.
it's like an amaro made from artichoke, and I'm not kidding. And I love
so bad.
artichokes. It's from Puglia in the heel of Italy, and I'm actually opening it now. So you're gonna like, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's very exciting because I may gag. I may say this is the best thing I've ever had. I have not tasted this type of liqueur ever in my life, but because I was thinking of you in Italy, Wes, I got this bottle. I brought it back, and I'm excited to drink with you here tonight.
Because it's good. Because I'm even though I did miss talking to you, I'm glad you're in DC because I don't want to sip that. That does not sound good at all.
You don't want to drink artichoke? What's wrong with
No.
you?
What I
can
have
smell
today, we have England was actually playing in the World Cup right when we started. So I have an English beer. It's called Old Speckled Hen.
Oh, I remember Old Speckle. I spent a year in England. Yeah, I drank a lot of warm, flat beer that year.
They were playing against Ghana, and I could not find any beer from Ghana around here. But
yeah, I don't know what that would be, but I respect it. Well, cheers. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Ooh, that's interesting. Artichoke liquor. I've now had something that I've never had before.
Will you have it again?
It's a great question. I could. Will that happen extremely soon? I'm not sure about that.
So, like 5 years from now, that bottle will probably still be in your cupboard somewhere, about 90% full.
I mean, I'll see you during TRB. You can check that out in January.
You can bring the artichoke liqueur to our get together.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. Anything for you, Wes. Anything for you.
I appreciate it.
So on that, should I bring us home?
Yes, I believe next time we'll again be live on YouTube, and that was July 7th.
Yes, right? Tuesday, July 7th at 6 p.m. Eastern. All will be welcome. We'll send the link out. In the meantime, all of our episodes are available at lookbothwayspodcast.com. You're welcome to send us messages, ask us questions there as well. And if you have a moment, if you can leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the podcast, we certainly do appreciate it. That's how people can learn about what we do here. But Wes, good to see you. And I guess it'll see you next in a couple weeks.
All right.